I think it's quite an accomplishment to leave me completely unengaged from the game from the very first level. Few levels with one of the worst alternate characters in all of gaming, but all off with an antagonist who has the dumbest motivation for committing murder I've ever seen in my life. It's obvious why I hate this case. And whoever set up how the enemies spawn, I just have to ask, how do you expect me to beat all these enemies? Wow, that was negative. In the last countdown, I talked about 10 video game levels that were pretty much the low point for each respective game for me. However, for every yin, there must be a yang, and while it is gratifying to insult the worst that gaming has to offer, it's just as important to give appreciation to those levels that made people like myself love this medium of entertainment in the first place. This countdown is devoted to the levels that not only act as the highlight of each game for me, but are enjoyable to the point where I would happily replay them just for how amazing these levels are. Aside from the 3 basic rules, keep in mind that I'll be talking about moments from the beginning, middle, and end of any of these games, so don't be shocked to find a spoiler or 2 on this list. Also, there will be at least 2 entries on this list where there are multiple levels taking one spot. When this happens, just know that there is some form of a connecting theme between them. With all that said, let's get started. While nowhere near as infamous as, say, water levels, ice levels are generally seen as a mixed bag. This is mostly due to those damn ice physics. I don't think I have to go into great detail about how being at the mercy of ice physics is not fun, especially in a platformer where the major hazard is falling to your death. Though I have noticed that some games have avoided this hurdle by not hampering the player with the aforementioned ice physics, and while I can see the benefit of this idea, I wonder if there's a level that could have ice physics, like the previously mentioned Crutch, and still be fun. And I think I found that level. Number 10 is 5-3 from New Super Mario Bros. In the latter 2D games, one of Mario's abilities is to slide on an incline, which was really satisfying to use, especially when he ran over several enemies. 5-3 is an entire level devoted to just that. This level is really fun, especially for players who have mastered the game's mechanics by allowing them to keep their momentum up while sliding through the stage and avoiding enemies. Top it all off with some well-hidden star coins, and we have an immensely entertaining level from such a simple game.
So nice!
One concept thrown around in games is immersion. The idea that a game can captivate the player to the point where they cease to be a gamer pressing buttons in front of a screen, but becomes one with the endgame character, interacting in a living, breathing world. And very few games succeed, as well as Vault 101 from Fallout 3. Your introduction to Vault 101 starts with you popping out of your mother's womb and getting asked for your gender, name, and future appearance. A bit much to ask from a newborn baby, but whatever. You are then taken through several sections of your life, from childhood to becoming a young adult, while subtly being taught about the game's mechanics. For example, when you're a toddler, you learn the basic movement controls. At the age of 10, you get a Pip-Boy and can interact with menus and start interacting with the NPCs. Several years later, you're taking the GOAT, and you essentially set up your character's stats, which will be really useful if you want a specific character build. When you hit young adult, all that talk about how you will die in the vault is proven false when the Overseer completely snaps, and you're forced to leave the vault by making use of some survival skills like hacking, lockpicking, and killing, and enter the Capital Wasteland. Only for the game to break the fourth wall and ask if you want to change anything in your life up to that point right before you start your post-apocalyptic journey. Well, you can't win them all. Regardless of that single flaw, it's good to see that an introduction could do this well in immersing the player, guaranteeing it a spot on this list. Donkey Kong Country Returns was an overall mixed bag in terms of what it presented. On one hand, it was fun and challenging, and on the other hand, it could be really cheap with its intense difficulty. Though for me, the standout moments from that game was always the Rocket Barrel stages. While difficult, these stages were fun and were improved significantly in the sequel, Tropical Freeze, with the best of these stages being Reckless Ride. The second level of Fruity Factory starts off with a double rainbow in the background, as you jump into a barrel to start the level. The main obstacles of this stage are giant fruit that you have to dodge, crushers and cleavers juicing all the colossal fruit, and a penguin driving a mech who's determined to take you down. This penguin's determination leads him to destroy parts of the factory, attempt to knock you out of the air, and launching flying penguins to crash into you. Yeah, penguins can fly apparently, it's best they don't question it. I really like the use of the dynamic camera in this level. It was boasted as one of the selling points for the game, and I feel it was used the best here, as you dodge obstacles that couldn't be avoided in the 2D perspective. This level ends with the penguin crashing his mech suit and getting launched to his surprisingly gruesome death, along with some foreshadowing what lies from the next level. Top it all off with a fantastic remix of the Rocket Barrel theme, and I can definitely say that this level is a delicious fruity treat that keeps me coming back for more. Wait, did I just really end this on a food pun? Whatever, next entry. So, Shovel Knight. Okay, I just finished playing through the first level, and now the training wheels are off. Where do I go? The bright and vibrant castle, or the dark and menacing looking graveyard led by a knight who looks like the Grim Reaper? And then I chose the second option. Glitchyard is what happens when someone at Yacht Club Games pays tributes to classic games such as Castlevania and Ghosts and Goblins. If the setting didn't convince you, then the music will, as it sounds like the composer wanted to find a middle ground between the menacing feel of Ghosts and Goblins and the energetic soundtrack of Castlevania, and it works beautifully. The level gimmicks presented here are well implemented, such as ghosts that will chase you after serving their graves, platforms made entirely out of skeletons that sink when too much weight's on it, and the most prominent of them all, lightning that flashes in the background to light up dark areas, which surprisingly add a fair amount of challenge and doesn't come off as cheap. And being a level from Shovel Knight, the stage is well designed and has plenty of secret treasure to find. The secret item you get in this level is the Phase Locket, which gives temporary invincibility, which is really useful throughout most of the game, especially in boss fights. Then there's the boss fight of the stage, Spectre Knight, which ends up being a tough but enjoyable fight, with Spectre Knight throwing his scythe around, summoning the dead to do his bidding, and using lightning seen earlier in the level. When all is said and done, I can definitely say that this is one of my favorite boss battles in the game, and a perfect end to my favorite stage in the game, for Shovelry. Uncharted, the video game equivalent to Indiana Jones, or the gender-swapped version of Tomb Raider, whatever you want to call it. The series has gained critical acclaim for its movie-like cinematics, and is my personal game of choice for swashbuckling adventure. My personal favorite of the trilogy is Uncharted 2, and the standout moment from Uncharted 2 is the utter train wreck that is chapters 13 through 50. Chapter 13, Locomotion, starts with Nathan Drake hopping onto a train to get the plot MacGuffin of the week back from Lazarevich. This level consists of Nathan Drake where he is way up the train and killing enemies while dodging obstacles above and to the side of the train. Things get more interesting when Nathan Drake has to avoid fire from an enemy helicopter that was flying near the train. Eventually the train enters a tunnel, giving you a much needed break from the helicopter and beginning Chapter 14. Chapter 14, Tunnel Vision, pretty much is like Chapter 13, but darker, from taking place in a tunnel, hence the name. Things get more interesting when you leave the tunnel and you transition from a tropical environment found earlier in the game to a snow-covered mountain range where you fight more heavily armored mooks, only to be attacked by the most persistent helicopter pilot ever. Seriously, did Lazarevich tell this pilot he'd get a raise for gunning down Drake? Anyhow, after avoiding its fire for a bit, you find a turret section to get some sweet revenge for all the hell this enemy chopper put you through. Chapter 14 ends with Lazarevich leaving Nathan Drake for dead and the train getting wrecked. Before I go on, I have to say how well put together the last two levels are. The shootouts are fun, if a bit repetitive, and the set piece of a train going through a tunnel is a very clever way of transitioning from one location to another. Aside from the lack of wind resistance, Naughty Dog succeeded in making you really feel like you're inside of, on top of, and to the side of an actual train. Chapter 15 starts where the game begins, with a heavily injured Nathan Drake climbing out of the train wreck that's hanging off the side of a cliff, and fighting to stay alive. Eventually, Drake is left fighting the toughest enemies in the game, with the harsh, cold environment wearing him down. And that's something I rarely see in games, the feeling of weakness as the very environment wears you down and being pushed to your physical limit. And to see this feeling here of all places is quite the surprise. And I just realized I have no idea on how to end this segment. So here's an unrelated clip.
Die, potato!
I like trains.
Oh, no, wait!
You know what? Enough of these simple mainstream games. Let's enjoy ourselves some highbrow entertainment.
Oh God, you sick fuck, let me out of there!
It's beautiful. Fort Frolic is what happens when Bioshock gets bored of that whole story thing and gets sidetracked into an area comprised of pure artistic insanity. This segment of Rapture is led by Sander Cohen, an artist who might have a few screws loose. He puts you on a scavenger hunt to gather pieces for his masterpiece, the Quadrille, a sculpture consisting of dead bodies holding pictures of more dead bodies. I wonder if there's a connecting theme here. What makes this level stand out from the rest of the game, aside from that poem about bunnies, is the fact that I feel that it embodies the theme of Bioshock, of a perfect world that's fallen from grace. Unlike the rest of Rapture that was destroying the battles between Ryan and Atlas, here you can see the last glimpse of what Rapture used to be before it all inevitably goes to hell. Kinda like seeing the moments of sanity before insanity finally takes over. In this level you get the crossbow, which is my favorite weapon in the game, and while ammo for it might be a bit scarce, it's always fun to use. When you finish the monstrosity being passed off as a masterpiece, you can engage in an optional boss fight with Sander himself. And while simple, it is rewarding when you beat him and finally get to see what the reward is underneath the second glass. A nice little send-off to the crazy fun level known as Fort Frolic. If you looked at my channel icon at any point, you probably noticed that I like the character Darkpit from Kid Icarus Uprising. And number 4 on this list is an entire level devoted to battling this anti-hero. Chapter 6, Dark Pit. The beginning portion is a flight level where you fight Dark Pit and the underworld forces. There are some really fun moments here, such as some entertaining dialogue between Pit, Dark Pit, Palutena, and Medusa, and a nice little bit of foreshadowing for later events in the game. Before the flight portion ends, there's one moment where Patu uses an enemy to snipe you from a distance. However, the most fun is found on the ground portion of the level. The ground portion can be described as a multiplayer stage within single player, where you fight Dark Pit throughout the level. Each battle has Patu using various weapons that you can equip, making each fight with him feel different. And this level is very replayable, since Dark Pit's location and what type of weapon he uses changes on each playthrough. One fight has used the Cherubot to beat the crap out of Dark Pit, the other has Pit the Second use a staff to snipe you from the top of a mountain, and one has you fight underground with DP armed with a club, and the fourth possible battle has you fight on an altar with Patu using a cannon. Each fight varies in difficulty and enjoyment, but all of them are a blast to play through nonetheless. The final fight has Patui armed with a silver bow and using the power of flight. It's a very entertaining fight, with the cherry on top being the banter between Pit and Dark Pit throughout the level, hitting its high mark during the fight itself. And throughout the entire level you hear Dark Pit's theme, which is one of the best songs in the game. An awesome level to introduce one of my favorite characters in gaming. What more could you ask for? In the last video, I essentially signed my own death warrant by saying one of the levels from Fire Emblem Awakening was incredibly annoying and tedious. That chapter is followed up by Chapter 10, Renewal, the most emotionally stirring, competently designed, and showing of some surprising depth of character rarely seen in a video game. I consider this to be one hell of a comeback. Okay, let me start from the beginning. After that death scene, the Shepherds are forced to retreat with Gangrel soldiers following after them. However, General Mustafa and his army are not like the other enemies that you fight in the game, as they are willing to end a fight peacefully if possible, but due to Gangrel's hold on them, a group of people who are willing to drop their weapons are now forced to fight instead. It's really a tragedy when you think about it. Mustafa's intentions are noble, however fate was not on his side. He and his army are fighting on the wrong side of the battlefield and are caught in a fight they can't avoid. Even the music reflects this tragedy. Unlike most of the stages where normal music is playing in the background, here the theme Don't Speak Her Name takes its place for both the overhead map and the battles. It's an emotionally gripping song that admittedly has left me choked up a little. The level plays out like most of the stages in Fire Emblem Awakening, with one exception going to Chrom's uncontrollable rage that I swear makes every other attack from him a critical hit, and most of his army surrendering when the general dies. What gets this level this high up on the list is the strong emotions that it's able to convey and showing a more tragic side to war that's rarely seen in most games. And I can definitely say that this is the contender for the second most depressing moment on this list. The Collectors. They destroyed your ship, killed most of the crew on said ship, kidnapped hundreds of people throughout the galaxy, and kidnapped your crewmates on the second Normandy. Now it's time to take the fight back to them. Throughout the entire game, the Collector base was said to be the place where no ship has ever come back from, all of which is proven true the second you go through the Omega 4 relay and avoid tons of debris consisting of destroyed ships. Here you will either make it through with little to no problem, or have several squad mates die before you even make it to the base. Whether you survive or not will be based around how well you upgraded the ship and befriended your allies. This level makes you truly feel like a commander by testing your knowledge of your teammates as you choose the right squad mates to send on specific missions within the collector base. This mission consists of 2 parts, both of which put a nice little twist on the repetitive shooting within the game. The first part, Infiltration, is a race to hack open doors so that one of your tech specialists doesn't die in the ventilation shaft. After that section, you learn what the collectors were doing with all the people they were kidnapping. To make a long story short, the people were killed, melted down, and used to construct the Reaper. The next section, The Long Walk, has one of your biotics make a portable dome to protect you and your squad mates from the collector's Seeger swarm in the area. You then go through some more repetitive shooting to place a bomb that will either destroy or preserve the base, until the humanoid Reaper activates and tries to kill you. Boss fights in the Mass Effect games have ranged from good to terrible, and the final battle with the humanoid Reaper falls into the former, being a fairly enjoyable fight. Not the best that I've ever fought, but enjoyable nonetheless. After killing that monstrosity, you escape onto your ship and letting the bomb go off and watching the collectors burn, ending one of the best final levels in gaming. However, I do have some issues with this level, hence why it's not number 1. I'm the kind of person that does side quests in most games, so I was able to upgrade the ship to max before even entering the Omega 4 relay. And the jobs have very easy descriptions, so having a basic knowledge of your teammates will yield the best results. So completing this section isn't as hard as the game lets on. Regardless of my personal gripes, the collector base might just be one of the best final levels that I've ever experienced, and for me, it is the greatest moment in the entire Mass Effect trilogy. But what could top it? Before I get to number 1, here are some honorable mentions. Well, this is it. My number 1 favorite level in any game that I've played up to this point. And fittingly enough, it comes from my favorite video game series of the last console generation, Infamous. Specifically, Infamous 2. With this game containing the best penultimate level that I've ever played, and 2 endings that really left an impact on me as a gamer. But let's get started at the beginning with Death Toll. This level begins with Cole going after the last of the Blast Corps and having to take on an entire army of ice soldiers during a lightning storm. Wait, what happens when I hit the recharge button? Holy sh**! Yeah, you essentially have unlimited energy in this level. Balance is thrown completely out the window, and it is glorious. So after learning about your unlimited power, you chase the ice soldiers to a nearby tower, where after killing several of them, you need to break the ice covering the blast core to complete the level. After messing around the tower and getting some exposition from John for future events, Cole then activates several conveniently placed flamethrowers on the tower. Once the blast core is thawed out, the only thing standing in your way between you and the blast core is an entire Iceman army. And might I remind you that Cole has unlimited power. After that moment of being OP as all hell, you then move on to the final decision. The cutscene preceding this decision makes it clear that the 2 options, using the RFI and siding with the Beast, are both double-edged swords. In short, if you side with the Beast, thousands of people suffering with the plague will be saved, but millions of people who lack the conduit gene will die. However, if you use the RFI, you could save millions of normal people, and it will even kill the Beast. But it will also kill thousands of conduits, which includes yourself, Quo, and Nyx. With this knowledge, you will then take the respective path following all the other decisions that you've done up to this point. On a complete side note, the 2 side characters that represent good and evil switch sides for the final decision. Personally, I consider this to be a sign of how morally great the decision is. After all, you are choosing between 2 types of genocide to enact. Both the good and evil mission play out similarly. However, I noticed that the good version emphasizes platforming, and the evil version emphasizes shooting. Near the end, you have to take down one of your former allies. In the good mission, you fight Quo, who's trying to stop you from activating the RFI, and in the evil mission, you fight Nyx, who's using the RFI to kill the beast. After that, you then go on to the final battle of each respective story. The final boss of the evil story is probably the most difficult in the game, that being against Zeke Dunbar. If for whatever reason you have no idea who Zeke is, here's a cutscene summarizing Zeke and Cole's friendship up to this point.
You okay?
Yeah. Hey, Zeke. I've been treating you like shit. I'm sorry, man.
I screwed you over pretty hard back in Empire. Get it, man.
No. You've always got my back. Thank you.
Look, I don't call you brother because I like the way it sounds.
Knowing all this makes the boss fight incredibly hard to go through, and it doesn't pull any punches, with you openly having to press the fire button to kill him. This moment truly made me feel like I was a terrible person committing a horrible act, which is a testament to how strong the writing of Infamous 2 really is. Then there's the good final boss. After charging the RFI, you are then fully charged for a few minutes and can enjoy the last fight taking down the beast. Then activate the RFI to put an end to all the conflict in the game. This is followed up by a rather bittersweet ending, with Zeke's monologue at the end being truly worthy of a manly tear. And it is my favorite ending in all of gaming. This is the Renegade Master, and Infamous 2 stands out there as one of my favorite games of all time. With all that said, I'm signing out.
Through this land of tragedy, I try to find my way. And in this town of misery, I search for you. Now we walk away to the last of the days.
Wow, you made it to the end of the video. So, if for whatever reason you thought I was being too positive in this list, well, here's a countdown where I talk about my most hated levels in video games. Also, a YouTuber named ForestBug made a list about 10 underrated games, and I make an appearance in it, so feel free to give it a watch. And if you like what you saw, consider subscribing to my channel. It allows you to keep up with my work, and it motivates me to make more videos. With all that said, this is the Renegade Master, and I'll see you next time.